The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Signetti does it again. Another commit for Indiana. This time, it's your starting quarterback.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Hoover. That's right. Josh Hoover, the TCU quarterback transfer, has picked Indiana. He will be your starting quarterback in the year of 2026. And oh my goodness, what a day this has been already. You've picked up 2 commitments early. You've picked up another 2 down the stretch. Make this 5 now that Indiana has picked up on this Sunday afternoon. And we had to go live. We had to go live and talk about the insanity that today is of transfer portal mania for Indiana football, as they said, you know what? Let's get all of our visitors in. Let's get everybody here and let's make Sunday our day. Josh Hoover is now an Indiana Hoosier. And man, it doesn't get better than this, folks. It really doesn't. You're talking about a guy who was at TCU for 4 years, threw for over 3,000 yards this past season, nearly 3,500 yards this past season. He has over 9,000 yards in his career, over 70 passing touchdowns as well. This dude's a gunslinger. He absolutely is a baller. He's a winner. He's a great quarterback, a great passer, a great decision maker, and he will fit perfectly in the Indiana offense. I mean, this was a match made in heaven. There were several quarterbacks out there in the transfer portal window that we knew were going to enter and that eventually did, right? We knew about Mestamaker. We knew about Hoover. We knew Sam Levitt, Brendan Sorsby. There's a lot of names out there. But Josh Hoover just made the most sense to me with how he plays, pocket passer, deep down the field, pro-level throws. He just seemed to make the most sense for Indiana. And now he is your quarterback for 2026. And there were some conversations, right, about if it was going to be Alberto Mendoza's show or if they would bring in a quarterback. If you listened or watched Locked On Hoosiers consistently, you know that we told you a transfer portal quarterback was coming. And Josh Hoover felt like the perfect option, felt like the best choice for Indiana. Was he the highest ranked transfer portal quarterback? No, he wasn't. Was he the highest ranked portal player at all? No, he wasn't. But since when does Indiana care about that? Since when do the Hoosiers give a darn about rankings and stars and things like that? The Hoosiers simply don't. And for people that want to live in that world, who, if you're not just the super 5-star and ranked 1,000 or whatever, then I don't want you, then you can live that life. That's fine. Indiana has proven they go get players they want and players they know that can win football games. And Josh Hoover is that guy. This past season at TCU, he had a 66% completion percentage, threw for almost 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. His passer rating was 153. Folks, that's really, really good. That's really good, over 9,000 yards in his career. Again, over 70 touchdowns in his career, the exact number. He has thrown for 9,629 yards, 71 touchdowns, and just 33 interceptions. Also has 8 rushing touchdowns as well. So he kind of can do it all, can Josh Hoover. And a guy that will be a senior, have a year of eligibility stepping in. You just went and got one of the best players in the portal. Pair that with Nick Marsh, who you just picked up from Michigan State earlier today. Pretty darn good 1-2 punch offensively, if you ask me. Pretty darn good in just a couple of days of the portal being open and Indiana just now getting started. Because we had to play in a Rose Bowl, in case people forgot. We had a college football playoff game we had to worry about. And now you hit the portal and you have fixed the quarterback problem for 2026 because, look, we love Fernando Mendoza. There's no doubt we love him. He's not coming back. He ain't coming back. And he shouldn't. It would be dumb for him to do so. He can go to the pros, get drafted, and try to make a career on Sundays. You needed an answer. You needed a fix. And Josh Hoover is that guy. And I think this is a dream scenario for all parties involved. For Josh Hoover and his camp, for Indiana and theirs. Because we've talked about Indiana becoming a quarterback dreamland, a destination location for guys like Josh Hoover who can simply throw it all over their yard. Why would you not want to come to Indiana as a quarterback? 2 transfer quarterbacks have already worked here, right? Curtis Rourke from Ohio, he's playing in the NFL. And Fernando Mendoza from California, he just won the Heisman Trophy. Every quarterback in the portal should have been knocking on the door and calling the phone of Indiana, say, please let me come to Bloomington. I'm begging you. And Josh Hoover said, hey, I'd like to come play there. And Indiana looked at his stats and looked at his film and said, I think we'd like you to play here too. And they come together as Josh Hoover commits to the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana up to 5 now commits in the class of 2026 for the transfer portal. There are some things, okay, that stand out about him, right? I love his downfield passing. I think he had an 85-yard touchdown or an 85-yard pass this season. He's not scared to air it out. He looks like he should be playing in the NFL. He's built like a truck, 6'2", 200 pounds as a quarterback, and he's got experience. Man, I know this is another 1-year rental. I get it. I totally understand that there are some concerns on that, but you've got to be excited about the experience that this guy brings. And he's had weapons around him at TCU, and he's played in an up-tempo offensive juggernaut offense like TCU. At times, it's kind of hit or miss, but Josh Hoover makes that thing go. And I think this just makes perfect sense for Indiana.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The portal is spinning, and it has given Nebraska a quarterback.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast.
The first domino seems to have fallen with Notre Dame quarterback Kenny Minchey committing to the Huskers, and he assumes to be, at least in the strong mix, to be Nebraska's starting quarterback next year. So we got stuff to talk about.
That is right. Yeah, there's going to be a quarterback battle, it would seem, at Nebraska. We don't know everything about the quarterback situation. We won't for a couple of more weeks, at least the identity of everyone who's going to be in that room. But we know one big name in that room now is Kenny Minchey, the 3-year Notre Dame backup who is now committed and soon to be signed with Nebraska as the Huskers' first ad of this portal season. So a little bit of just laying this out for you right here. For the next 2 weeks, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start every podcast with the news of the moment, your portal headlines, or if it's not the news of the moment and there's other big things happening in Nebraska football, we will at least get you the portal news somewhere before the first break, because this is like an entire season of recruiting in 10 or 12 days. But it's actually more consequential than an entire season of recruiting, because you are adding and losing starting caliber players, not high school seniors who are 2, 3, or 4 years away from making an impact in the program. This is a sprint to January 16th. Who committed? We'll tell you that. Who's visiting? Who left? Who might leave? And then where do the numbers stand, which is always going to be something to watch. We will tell you that in the third segment of this show. But the headline today, Connor, is that Kenny Minchey is in and Keona Davis is out, among others, to announce their departures on Sunday. Larry Tarver, the DB from Miami, Houston Kahina Torres, the offensive lineman from Hawaii, and on Saturday, it was DBs Ramir Stewart, Braylon Prude, and then defensive lineman Dylan Parrott. So a lot going on in the Nebraska football portal landscape.
Yeah, we had a chance, a little bit of a chance just to give our initial thoughts on this, because it seemed like this is the way we were headed on Friday. And I think, in a couple of days of just trying to understand where people's heads at or on this, I think there is still a fair amount of skepticism that Kenny Minchey has not been a starter. Yeah, a fair amount of skepticism that Kenny Minchey has not been a starter in his college football playing career so far. And, and the way it was, sort of laid out for the public when his commitment was announced on Sunday was Nebraska landed one of, if not their top target at the quarterback position. And I think that is the truth. And then people wondered, wait a minute, top target? Like, that guy's never played before. What's going on here? And so I think a lot of questions sort of arose that way. I am not worried about it in particular, but I'm curious to hear what you think about it, Mitch.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, you can be a glass half empty guy and say he hasn't proven it at the college level. And Nebraska, with the position that it's in as a program coming off of consecutive 7-win seasons, needs to go right now and add a quarterback who is experienced in winning games at the highest level of the sport. And that's not the direction that it chose to take. And it didn't necessarily pursue those kind of quarterbacks. And I still think there's another quarterback out there for Nebraska to add, but that's not going to be somebody who has been a starter at the P4 level. The fact that that's one thing we know for certain with the addition of Minchey is that the aim for Nebraska now is to have Minchey and TJ Lateef, and things have still got to shake out for TJ Lateef. He says that he wants competition, that he likes competition. He embraces competition. That's what we saw from him in his first year at Nebraska, and he's getting paid well. That's always a factor. It's a huge factor. It's something we should not overlook in these discussions, is the fact that these players are getting paid. I would say both of these two, Lateef and Minchey, in the 2026 season with the contracts that they will have signed, are going to be getting paid between $500,000 and $1 million a piece. Like, that's just the market for that kind of a player. So that needs to be taken into account, because, hey, TJ Lateef may not love the fact that Nebraska added somebody who's going to be right there with him, potentially even a favorite over him going into spring practice, but he's also getting paid very well. And I think Nebraska will add another quarterback and still stay under the total amount of dollars that it paid Dylan Raiola with the 3 that it potentially has on scholarship. I believe that the next quarterback you will hear added to the mix for Nebraska is going to come from a lower level of football. Somebody who is upgrading his pay in a significant way and is coming to Nebraska for just the opportunity to be able to be included in the discussion. So that's kind of where things are at in the quarterback position. Dog.
It's making the dogs bark, man. It's getting people going.
But what do you think? Like, what's going to be your take on Kenny Minchey, like as a quarterback, not necessarily like how he got here or what it means for the position at large?
Well, I think the approach and the environment in which he walks into shapes sort of how people feel about him right off the bat and the first impression. And I think people are going to have a hard time getting over the fact that he hasn't been a full-time starter yet, and they'll wonder, okay, well, do you have enough money? And I think the answer to that is still, Nebraska is fine to compete in the category of guys that they feel like they can go after and pay them. But as I always like to remind people right around this time of year, it is, yes, it's about that, and Nebraska's competitive in that space, but it's about winning, and it's about where you can go and you can find a place. So I don't know how many shots Nebraska took at some of the higher guys in the list, but I don't think they would have been able to get any of them. And so I don't mind the idea of going to, a guy who's really talented, Elite 11 guy, nearly won the quarterback battle at Notre Dame this year over CJ Carr. It was neck and neck right at the end of things, and then giving him the reins to do his thing in your offense. And there is going to be some learning with that. There is going to be the adjustment to not only being the quarterback and starting all of the games, but also, experiencing what it means to be the starting quarterback, especially in a place like Nebraska and all those different things. And I do think it'll be Minchey at the end of the day. And so I think that's okay. And you're willing to live through it going in through 2026 and looking ahead to 2027. If everything, stays on track, you could put together a picture that says we're going to be really, really good in 2027, or we're going to really go for it in 2027. I know that's a really hard thing for people to hear. You're not punting on 2026, but it's really, really important, to get those feet underneath you. Nebraska just doesn't have a great sense of direction at the moment. And so getting young players who have years of eligibility on their tracker is an important thing for me. And I think they did that with this.
There are 4 quarterbacks left playing in college football on the cusp here of the CFP semifinals Thursday and Friday of this week. All 4 arrived at their current schools as transfers. That's just the way it goes in college football today. 2 had starting experience at previous Power 4 programs before they got to their schools this year. 2 did not. So Dante Moore came to Oregon from UCLA, where he was not a starter, and Trinidad Chambliss, being the total outlier in the group, came to Ole Miss from Division II Ferris State. And then, of course, you have Carson Beck at Miami, who was a starter at Georgia, and Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, who was a starter at Cal. So it's 50-50 on the way that it worked for the 4 quarterbacks at CFP semifinalists this year. And I'm not saying that that's what Nebraska's aim is for next season, but it's Nebraska's aim is to be successful. And those quarterbacks are running successful programs. And I think if you extrapolate that out to the entirety of college football, that's generally going to be what you find, is that about half of the quarterbacks who are leading successful programs are going to be doing it as transfers, or maybe they're not transfers, but they're in their first year at that school. And then the other half have been around and have done it at the Power 4 level before. So experience is not the prerequisite that you absolutely need to be good in college football, like it is in the NFL.
A lot of people, Mitch, had the expectation that that Nebraska was in a place where they, because Rule talked about the money, and he's like, hey, we're going to be able to go out and do this and this and this and this, and that's not the direction they went.
Spend the money on defensive linemen, spend the money on offensive linemen, spend the money on having a quarterback room that is in a situation so that if Minchey isn't the guy, or that he ends up getting hurt like Nebraska starter did this year, that you don't have to go to somebody who is a true freshman in his first real college football action. If you have 3 who've all got something under their belt going into next season, then I think you're immediately in a better spot than where Nebraska was in 2025.
And like I said, keep in mind, I think that this is about how many years you want that player to be in that position. And I think it was key for Nebraska to have a guy who's going to be your starter for 2 years, in my mind. But also, like I said at the very beginning, I do think it's about, what you could attainably attract at this moment. It's just, you have to admit that to yourself. Nebraska, it's going to be really hard for them to pitch to a guy who, just won 10 games this year at a Power 5 school to be like, hey, come be our quarterback, because we're going to take you to the next level. That clearly isn't happening. So Nebraska has to build that piece of it first to make it an attractive part. Look at Indiana. I mean, they could have had anybody they wanted. Indiana's been in the playoff 2 years in a row. They might win a national championship this year. They got everybody in the country lining up at this point. Josh Hoover is going to be their quarterback next year from TCU. They're going to get the running back from Boston College. I mean, they could put together an all-star team if they wanted to. Nebraska doesn't have that kind of thing to it. We don't have to compare everything to Indiana, but it's money is one thing, but winning is the biggest part. Winning and having an identity, and Nebraska's got to start from scratch on that.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Badgers are red hot in the portal. They got their quarterback, Colton Joseph, to Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers.
Colton Joseph. The Badgers landed their quarterback target number one, the guy that they pulled and said, this is who we want in the portal. They got him. Colton Joseph, per Pete Thamel and many others, and Nick Osen and several others, Evan Flood. Colton Joseph commits to the Badgers after visiting this weekend. Massive get for Wisconsin. So it's the domino, right? You have to kick off that quarterback domino. They also picked up another tight end, but you had to get the quarterback. Nothing else mattered unless you got the quarterback. They got the quarterback, Colton Joseph. ODU last year, let's put his numbers back up here. 2 years left of eligibility, right? So you're getting a RPO dual threat quarterback with size that has 2 years of experience, that has 2 more years of eligibility. Really, really, really big get for the Badgers. And let's go. This feels good. So I think I want to start here. We've talked a lot about Colton Joseph's game. And we're going to talk more about his game, what he brings to the table, how it impacts the team, what's next, how it's going to fit with Jeff Grimes. There's going to be a lot more here. But I think we got to start here. The money's real. Everything Chris McIntosh talked about, right? Everything that we kind of heard mid-season, that we're going to invest in this program. We're going to push it to where it needs to be in the Big Ten, where it should be in the Big Ten, where it's traditionally been for the last 25 years in the Big Ten. The money's real. You don't go get a quarterback like this unless that investment is there. Feel good about that, Badger fans, because you can't succeed in college football without that type of investment, without those resources. The money is real. It's there. Colton Joseph is validation of that. This is a big win for so many reasons outside of the football field. Nationally, I had 2 or 3 people text me this morning who don't cover the Badgers. They're more national level guys. And they said, holy cow, how did Wisconsin get him? Because the perception is Wisconsin's down, right? Because the last 2 years they have been down. To be able to go get in Colton Joseph nationally, that creates some shockwaves. It's going to bring other players in with him. There's going to be receivers that come with Colton Joseph because he's here. There's going to be other offensive players that buy in because you got the quarterback. It's a validation of the staff, of what they're selling, of what they're telling players what we're going to do this year. The vision is still there. You have to, because there's other programs after Colton Joseph that would also spend money. So it's the money's there, but also the staff is still selling belief. They're still creating a vision. This is a big, big win, guys. This is a big, big win. And you look back at the last 3 portal cycles, is this the biggest win they've had? I don't even know how it's arguable. This is a tier A quarterback for Wisconsin. It's one of the best quarterback transfer targets in the country, and you're coming off a season where you couldn't throw the ball, where the offense was what it was. To be able to go out and then get this guy who fits perfectly with what Jeff Grimes wants to do, by the way. This is a seamless fit for what Jeff Grimes wants to do. Just a massive, massive gift for Wisconsin. Let's go to the comment section. And there's a lot that still needs to happen, right? You need to get some receivers. More is going to come. You got to get some receivers. You got to get some offensive line. You got to get a couple more pieces defensively for sure. All of that still needs to happen, but none of it mattered if you didn't get the quarterback. None of it mattered if you didn't get Colton Joseph, because this was the guy you zeroed on. You said you're going to spend money. You said you're going to go in all in this offseason, and you did it. You pulled it off. It's a massive kudos to the staff, man. And let's give some of them credit. Let's give Pat Lambert, who's phenomenal. Give him credit. Kenny Guyton, quarterback's coach, who's a tremendous recruiter of people. Kenny Guyton is tremendously talented at building relationships, at continuing relationships. He's a great communicator, really personable. is a great guy on the staff to try to bring somebody in. Tremendous job. Brady Collins is phenomenal at selling to recruits as well, and just being that guy in the room that talks about the vision and what we're going to do for you when you get here. Kramer says, let's go. Running with Jason. Badgers are so choice right now. Brostein says, boom. Big says, give me Trey Brown too, and I'd be so freaking happy. Him and CJ at ODU lit it up. Are there any other receivers from ODU in the portal we could take a run at? There were 2 receivers, I think, from ODU that entered the portal. Trey Brown is definitely one of them. Again, you're going to get receivers because you got the quarterback. It's such a massive deal. And everything I've heard about Colton Joseph, I heard it from a couple different places, is this is also the type of quarterback you want in your room. Leader, a dog, physical, somebody that has those type of intangibles that you want in a huddle. This is a really big get, guys. And it's a massive win for Wisconsin, where bring back NFL 2K says, literally saved my day. Yeah, this saves the offseason. This is a massive get for Wisconsin. I can't oversell it from where this program was in the middle of last season, when it felt a little rudderless, when people were frustrated about Chris McIntosh saying we're going to go all in, and you said, well, money's not going to solve it. Well, money gets you a quarterback like this. Money does solve some of it. Money is a massive deal for Wisconsin. And if you can go get a quarterback like this, you can solve a lot of your issues. It just is what it is. Baron Von Trout says a better highlight of my day than this stud of a Packers game will be. Big says, watching highlights of CJ and he has speed. Let's throw a couple quotes up here. So I was doing some research into Colton Joseph for sure. This is from Clay Helton, who played him this year. Georgia Southern head coach. You think you've got everybody covered, and he just takes off. He's moving the chains. He's creating explosive plays. This is from the Old Dominion offensive coordinator. The thing I've come to admire about Colton is how he plays the game. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He kind of toes the line between cocky and confident. We call him Cowboy Colton. That right there is very much what I've heard about him. He is a very confident player, but he's not brash. Not brash in the way that he rubs teammates wrong. His teammates believe in him. Talking to somebody who covered a lot of his games last year, he said his teammates really gravitate around him. He's a really natural leader as a quarterback, very confident. He gets in the huddle. People really believe in what he's going to do, but he's not brash. He's not off-putting with it. I think he's a really good dude for the quarterback room. A couple more stats here. Joseph last year had 951 yards on design rushes. That was third most in FBS. Joseph's 8.2 yards per designed rush, easily the most for any quarterback in FBS, ahead of second place Bryce Underwood. The most yards per designed rush in FBS for a quarterback. This is another good one here. 3.9 yards after contact per designed rush. Second most among all FBS quarterbacks. Again, you can talk about competition level, but there's a lot of quarterbacks at his competition level that aren't putting up these type of numbers. Okay. He is a physical, really dynamic runner, really athletic player, 6'2", 210. And I think the other thing you want to talk about here, and then we'll get into a bunch of your comments. Guys, let me know your concerns. What's your ceiling? What's your floor for Colton Joseph? We talked about that before, but now that he's here officially, I think we talk about it more. One of the other big things with this is this could be your guy for 2 years. You might not need to go to the portal next year. In fact, if everything goes right, I don't think you will. You get him in this year, plays well, you have him for one more season, assuming he doesn't completely get hurt, which would be the worst, or just ball out and he's an NFL guy. But you probably have him for 2 years. So that means next year you're going into the offseason with the most important spot potentially already checked off. This maybe allows a guy like Ryan Hopkins to come in, learn for 2 years, and then take over the reins. Or Carter Smith. Carter Smith could come in or could stay here, develop, learn, and then take over the reins. That's a big part of this too. Maybe you can finally get out of – maybe this is actually the bridge quarterback that gets you out of the year-to-year stuff, right? Getting a portal guy with 2 years allows those younger guys to develop. I don't know. It's definitely another part of this that's really big. And then I think the last thing I want to hit on just from the 30,000-foot view before we really maybe dive into his game a little bit is this is just a validation of what this staff can do. It's a validation that given resources, they can still compete with just about most schools in the country. Because this is not a Wisconsin kid. This is a Southern-ish kid. He grew up in California. He's played in warm weather. You get him up to Wisconsin on some of the coldest weather of the winter. coming off a terrible season with schools like Florida State, Florida after him, who have tons of receivers on their roster and who will also spend a lot of money, who are also great football schools, who play in the SEC, who play in great weather. And you get Colton Joseph and you just lock him up. You just are able to sell your vision of the program and how you're going to use the quarterback spot. This is a really strong validation point for the staff, for Jeff Grimes, for Kenny Guyton, for Coach Fickle, for the resources, for Chris McIntosh, for this administration. Massive gift for Wisconsin. Can't oversell it.